Viewers, very warm welcome to Arif Kisana's channel. Today I have very special guest. She is a writer, she is a researcher, and she has done wonderful job in Sweden. And in today's conversation, we'll talk about Swedish society, Swedish culture, Swedish language, integration, and many other aspects of the Swedish society. So I hope you will like today's this interview with Anne-Charllotte Anderson. Very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Arif.
You did wonderful job in Swedish society. For example, you are a writer,
Yes.
you are a researcher. Today we'll talk different aspects of Swedish society. But first of all, viewers wanted to know about your early life.
Early life?
Yes.
Yes. So I am born in Uppsala, and then we were moving finally to Småland in the south of Sweden. Småland is a landscape where people are very hardworking. I would say that most people in Sweden are hardworking, very hardworking, because of the climate. We had a terrible climate. It was winter like 6 to 8 months in a year. So we have to struggle. And of course, everyone in the world are hardworking. You are from Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, of course, it's this part of the world. So all people are hardworking, but especially in this climate.
And how many years you stayed in Småland?
I only stayed up to 12, and after that I moved to Södertälje. And Södertälje is a very special place because we were inviting and welcoming a lot of immigrants and also refugees, also Jewish people after the Second World War or during the Second World War. So it was a place for immigrants to come.
While living in Småland, so did you adopt Småland, the special dialect of Swedish?
Yes, I did. I had a problem with the R, like I said, roost. I can't say it anymore, but because I'm a Swedish and English teacher. So it was a long time ago I skipped this R, but it was difficult to say R, for example.
Which part of Sweden we can say is the center of Swedish language development or the home of Swedish language?
We have different kind of people in Sweden. We have free tribes, The people who are living in the south, the people who are living in the middle of Sweden, like Stockholm, and then we have the north part. And this country is so long, so if you travel from the north part to the south part, it's like traveling from Stockholm to Rome. So then you can imagine.
So it means even within Sweden, so different parts have different culture, traditions.
Yes.
You say?
We have 25 landscapes. And I was doing one time a research about my family, and then I saw that, at that time, if we go back 1,000 years, so then I was more like a Scandinavian person, and that is Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. So I'm 99.5% Scandinavian from these 3 countries, but I also have some small part of 0.5% Finnish-Russian, and that's very interesting.
So that's very interesting. So it means you have the roots not only in Sweden but in Scandinavia.
Yes, the whole Scandinavia.
And what is the different cultural aspects of these Scandinavian countries?
Well, the thing is that, nowadays we have very good contact with Denmark. We watch the Danish programs and films, and we have very good contact with Norway. We used to have a Norwegian journalist who had a very popular program in Sweden called Skavlan, and you can still see it on the SVT Play, So we have good contact with Denmark and Sweden, Norway, but also with Finland. But the thing was that for 400 years we were in conflicts and wars with Denmark. 70 wars and conflicts.
70?
Yes, 70. Conflicts and wars, But nowadays, we like Copenhagen. We like to go to Copenhagen. We want to have an ice cream with real cream. We want to have the red hot dog. We want to have the Danish wienerbröd. That's a kind of bun, with a lot of fat, but very, very tasty.
I think one of the main war was when Danish occupied Sweden, and
Yes.
in Stockholm, in the old town, there was the Stockholm bloodbath.
Yes,
so
yes.
that was, I think, tragic in the history.
Yeah. The problem was, in Denmark they had a king called Christian. And in Denmark, of course, they said Christian the kind person. And in Sweden we call him the dictator or the tyrann, the person who was an evil person.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
But he was not so clever. Maybe he thought he was very clever. But to invite 80 people to a party, some kind of party or dinner, and after they've been eating and drinking, then he was taking them outside in the marketplace outside the royal palace, and he killed them and even killed children, and he was killing the noble people, the highest people in Sweden. Yes, and even children. And I've heard from some people who have been studying the history that the blood was so much. It was so much, it was floating like a river in the old city. And nowadays, if you want to visit the Nobel Museum,
in Old Town.
Yeah, it's just outside there.
Yeah, there is one building, still they have this red color.
Yeah, it's something in the middle there, it's in the square,
But you say now Swedes have...
But anyway, I just want to say that, in the beginning, this Danish king was very successful. But then later on he came back to Denmark, and then he became a pirate. And then pirate, what is pirate? The Caribbean pirate, So finally he had to escape to Norway. I will say that, because I've been studying many languages, that doesn't mean that I speak them fluently. But for example, you are from Pakistan. I had many friends for more than 30 years from Pakistan, India and Bangladesh. And I've been living in India, in New Delhi. I've been traveling around India. So I know you have Sanskrit there. And then you have Hindi, you have about 100 languages. In Pakistan you have Urdu. You also have a lot of Afghan people. So they speak, like Pashto and Dari. So anyway, I know a little bit of, Urdu, a little bit of Hindi. I can mention some words like chacha, chapati, chai. This sound. Tika, tik-tak. So I'm used to meet, a lot of Pakistan people. I used to be the chairman of honor for a culture organization, which are gathering, these people from these countries, and they were Muslims, they were Christians, they were Hindus, and that's something I like, when people from you were together before 1947,
exactly. Yes, exactly.
And so you are all brothers, So
do you like Indian Pakistani food culture?
I love Indian food. There is nothing better than Indian food, And Indian food is of course Pakistan food and Bangladesh food, but of course there are some difference. But I know that, for example, in India, because up to 1947 all these countries were together,
Exactly.
So you have about 3,000 common dishes in India. 3,000. That shows the culture, and the culture in India is it's so long. We say 5,000 years, but maybe it's 50,000 years,
You have opportunity to have contact with more than 100 nationalities.
Yes.
And
through my work.
So
through
you
my
have
work.
a wide experience of meeting the people. What you will say about this?
Well, I would say that, we are all humans. We are not animals, we are humans, And we have a heart. All people, not depending on the background, if you are Muslim, you are Jewish, you are Christian, you are Hindu, you are Buddhist, we all have a heart. You have a heart, I have a heart. We have a brain, we have a soul, and we have a body. We have the 5 fingers usually, So we are all the same, What I have noticed, for example, studying religion, I'm not a religious person, but I believe in God. But I also respect people who are not believing in God. Because, sometimes even people who are not having the belief in God, maybe they don't think it's important. For me, it's important, but I can respect and understand that it's not so important for other people, because maybe they talk about humanity. But, we are all the same,
I understand. Unfortunately, there were some incidents about Quran burning. What will you say as a Swede? What your comments?
The thing is that I heard it on the news this morning, And of course it's interesting for everyone. And it was very interesting today, especially today it was interested, because it was a guy on TV, doesn't matter what his name was, but he said that Muslim people have more problem in other countries, especially in the Muslim countries, than they have in Sweden. And you know, like 8% of the Swedish populations are, at least on the paper, they are Muslims. And I've heard it before. It's between 600 to 800,000 people who are Muslims in Sweden. And then, of course, many of them are not practicing. But still, you know, when you are born, you have your ceremonies, whether you like it or not. No. And when you die, usually, I mean, maybe you don't see yourself as a Muslim anymore. I mean, but when you die, usually you have the funeral of the Muslim person, or a Hindu person, or a Christian person, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So,
but you know that the people.
And then what he said was also that the people who were burned in the Quran, they were not Swedes. It was a Danish person, Paludan.
Or Iraqi
person.
person.
And then it was this other one from Iraq. And he also mentioned that this Iraqi person, he has been in Sweden for a long time, but he didn't have much connection with Sweden. So he said it's politics.
There is a lot of debate that is this freedom of speech, or how we can provoke other religion, other people of the other faith. So do you think the existing laws prohibit this burning of Holy Quran, or do we need some new law here in Sweden to stop this?
I have many friends who are Muslims. I also have friends who are Hindus, and of course we are a Christian country. Many people don't think that they're Christian anymore, or Protestants, you know. But the thing is that, you know, if you look at the history of Sweden, so, you know, before 1862, if you were a Catholic, for example, there were many queens that were Catholics in Sweden. They didn't convert to Protestant, to be Protestant or Christian, but they were allowed to pray and have their, you know, priests from the Catholic Church. But before 1860, if you were a Catholic, you could only stay 3 days in Sweden, and then you had to leave Sweden. That was one thing. And if we talk about the Jewish people, I mean, in most countries we have Jewish people, because we know that they were traveling, or maybe they were taken to these countries. I don't know about Pakistan, but in Iraq, for example, it was during the Mesopotamian period, you know. So we have about 30,000 Jewish people in Sweden, that one can say that they are, you know, belonging to the Jewish religion. So, you know, they were allowed to come in Sweden during the Gustav III, you know, the big culture king, who were having a lot of contact with France, you know, and he was also murdered, you know, because he wanted to give more democracy to the people. He wanted to get rid of the noble people, and it was the noble people who killed him. So then he was inviting some Jewish people. It was one guy, Aaron Isaac, from Berlin. He was good at, you know, making the coins. He was supposed to convert to Christianity, but he was a very strong person, so he said, I will not, once he was here. He was supposed to do it. And then after some time, because he was very successful, and I met the people who are belonging to his family. Here in Kungsholmen, where I live, he was creating 2 funeral places, and they're still around. But anyway, after some time in Sweden, when he was working hard, then he said, can I please bring 9 more people to Sweden who are Jewish, because then I can make, you know, like an organization. And then he built the synagogue in Stockholm. And I have been there because I have Jewish friends, you know.
You met the people from 100 nationalities, immigrants coming to Sweden. How you see the integration here in Swedish society?
You know, the thing, I will start as a pedagogue, you know. When you are in the classroom, you know, you can look at the background of the people, because I used to be responsible for the introduction courses, you know, when you meet them at first. And then, of course, we were cooperating with immigration, you know, because some schools that I work with, we have to cooperate with immigration. So the immigration officers came to the school, and then we made the integration. So I thought in the beginning that sometimes when I meet someone, a foreigner or a refugee, for example, who was someone who knows 8 languages, then of course I thought he will learn Swedish perfectly, And then sometimes you meet people who have not been to school much, 4 years or 6 years.
Exactly.
And you are thinking, okay, maybe they will be working in a restaurant or something. But I have learned in all these years, because I've been working 46 years now. That's a long time, I can't almost imagine it. And that is that the people who were very qualified for things, sometimes they were not able to make it in Sweden. And the people who didn't know how to read and write from their country,
exactly.
for example, China, or maybe from a Muslim country, a Arabic country, for example, they were, buying house, they were buying a restaurant, they got everything. And sometimes the very educated people were not able to succeed, but that was a long time back. Now, for example, I work with Scania. I think most people know about Scania. I work with the big medical companies. Takeda, for example, is a 250-year-old company. I work with Norfolk with the batteries. So, nowadays, I've decided to work with the headhunted people. And I think it's a reward for me, because I did a lot of hard work, with the refugees. And many things happened, when you are dealing with refugees, because sometimes they don't feel good. And it was also some situations when some refugees wanted to commit suicide or something.
You was the co-author of a wonderful book, Svenska, but Swedish at the work.
Yeah.
So, what will you advise for the people coming to Sweden, how they can learn Swedish a bit quickly or fast?
Yeah. The first thing that you should try to do, you should look for a Swedish person or an immigrant who speaks good Swedish, at least quite good Swedish, to make that person as a friend, It's not so easy to be good friend with a Swedish person, but once a Swedish person is opening her or his door, they are known to be very, very good friends, very good friends. And maybe you also have some experience from that,
agree.
So that is the first thing, to have some contact. And also try to speak at least, I make it very simple. 5 minutes. Try to speak Swedish, even from the beginning, for only 5 minutes every day with anyone. It can be 1 minute there, it can be 2 minutes there. Hi, how are you? How much does it cost? Where is the way to the subway? Whatever, only 5 minutes.
And the people already have learned the Swedish and living in Sweden, but they want to improve their Swedish. So what's your advice?
Then you should be a member of an organization. For example, I was working very much for the study circle organizations, like ABF, Vuxenskolan, MBV, TBV, universitetets kursverksamhet. So you can attend courses in the ABF, of course it's cheaper. Even, if you want to make your own group, you can contact, if you have a subject that you want to study, any subject, then you can call the ABF, and you can even get some money. To have a study circle leader, maybe one of the person in the group of 10 will be a study circle leader. You can study any subject. It can be Swedish history. It can be, whatever you want to study. It can even be a sport, that you play the table tennis, and then maybe you speak a little bit of Swedish, So, Sweden, I think, is the country in the world. I don't think Germany is before us in, gathering together for singing, for example. If a person is Christian, for example, or you don't need to be Christian either, you can attend choir in the church. There are many students that do that, especially from Germany. And then you can attend a lot of, libraries. There you can also get help with your Swedish. You have so many good books. You have easy readers. So if you have read the book in English, or maybe in Urdu or whatever, like Alibaba and the 40 Pirates, so you can find it in English, you can find it in Swedish. So maybe, then you have the book from the past. So when you read it again, it will be easy. So you have easy readers that you can ask the librarian for. You can also borrow children books, but you can also go to the second-hand shops.
Oh.
You have so many books in the second-hand shops. I have one close by Myrorna, and you have Stadsmissionen, etc., etc. So most of my books that I have here, it's not a question of money.
Yeah.
It's a question of finding very interesting books.
So you advise that this conversation is very important to improve our learning.
Yeah, only 5 minutes. Start with 5 minutes, and then it can be 7, 8, 10 minutes, you know.
And at the same time, watching the Swedish TV or listening to Swedish news.
And there you have also the, you know, like the SVT. You have this one that you can look at the program afterwards. And then, of course, you have films, so you have the subtitle, you know. Usually, we are not like the Germans or the French, you know. They dub, you know, all the films, you know, so everybody will be talking German or French, you know. So, you know, in Sweden, usually we speak 4 languages, you know. In school we learned, you know, Swedish, of course, English, and then like in my case, it was German, 6 years. And then when I went to high school, I was studying French. After high school, I studied a little bit of Spanish. And later on, I studied a little bit of Persian, Arabic. I learned some Hindi words, some Urdu words, and I also studied Latin.
So, knowing different languages will be helpful to learn Swedish more?
It will be helpful to learn Swedish, because if you look at the Swedish language, we have about 260,000 words. English, about 350,000 words. Arabic is about 600 to 1 million words, you know. So, but if you look at the Swedish language, we have a lot of French words, because we had a lot of connections with France. I mean, that was a country of culture. We have a lot of Latin words, Greek words, technical words, German words also, because, you know, mainly the Swedish people are Germans, you know, but that was, of course, before we call it Germany, you know. So people came to Sweden 14,000 years back. That's what we know now. Maybe it was earlier, but 14,000 years is a long time. But mainly from 11,000 years back, we have tracks. You know, you have some very good books. So the books I'm using, you know, I'm working for an American company called Global LT, and they say that I'm the best teacher in Sweden. I think I should be quite good now after 46 years, otherwise maybe I should have quit. But anyway, I have decided to use the book Mal 1.
Yes.
Because it's a very good progression in that book, and anyone can do it. And the second thing is that to do the grammar, I'm using the Form Focus A. You have A, B, and C, but A is enough. So the price of this book is about 800 crown, and it's really worth every penny, you know. With Mal 1 and the Form Focus A, you can pass the national test. And for example, if you want to do the national test, you have to make an essay. How many verbs do you think you need to pass the national test? Can you give me a guess?
Maybe 100.
Yeah, something like that. 110 verbs, you know. So you have a good understanding.
But Swedish grammar is very complicated if we compare to with the English. Because the verbs, adjectives, and even pronouns and the neuter, these things are complicated.
Well, I would say the opposite, you know. I would say that Swedish is very simple, but the complicated thing are all the exceptions. So Swedish, after teaching it since 1976, you know, that's a long time. I did it all the time.
But in English, we have the only 3 forms of the verb.
Yeah,
but in Swedish, we have, I think, 5. So, and for the adjective, it's in English there is no problem, but in Swedish it's always changing, and then the plural forms. So these things make complicated for the people.
One can make it simple, you know, because I was teaching for such a long time. So, for example, if we take the N and Et, 80% is N and the rest is Et. And usually what I have noticed in all these years is that when my students are making a mistake, usually it's on the technical words, you know. The technical words, they are usually Et. That's what I have noticed, because of course I don't know all words, you know.
And even sometimes the people speaking English, they have also problem with the prepositions.
Yeah, preposition, you know, some people, you know, they say there is no logic about the preposition. But there is a preposition book, Prepositionsboken, and there you can find all the explanations for all the prepositions, you know. And if you look at it really deep, there is a logic for all. For example, we take the på, which means at or on. It's for a surface, it's for work, it's for break, it's for all the fun things. And then we have E is for area, and it's also for volume. And then we have even but feelings, you know. If it's a negative feeling, I am mad at you. I'm not crazy about you because you are married and I'm also married, you know. So I will not say that, but maybe I can be mad at you, but I think you are such a polite person, so I will not be mad at you. But concerning the negative feeling, we use the preposition på. And positive feeling is E. So if your wife, I'm just joking with you. So, you know, it's a big difference if your wife will use the på or E, because E is positive and po is negative. So then you know. But most students, they don't come to that level of the language, that they will come inside the prepositions. But mainly the prepositions, you know, it's Latin. Pre is before, and pos or poseter something is to put. Put something before, you know. So that means, you know, prepositions, we can live without prepositions most of the time, you know. There are some Finnish people and some other people, they avoid the prepositions.
Without prepositions.
Yeah, they go on without the preposition.
And another problem is the pronunciation, because Swedish language has a different sounds, vowels, and sometimes when two letters combine and the sound is special. For example, here we some people say Skärholmen, some people say Skärholmen. What's the right pronunciation?
The thing is that, you know, this is very, very funny, you know, because I was studying Persian and Arabic, and I think Urdu, you know, and you know, it's quite close, you know, to these languages, you know. So the thing is that, you know, in Arabic, for example, we have A, and we have I, and we have you, for example, and then we also have Ain, you know, because I used to work at the Libyan embassy, you know, and there I was writing the telephone list and the names of the people calling, because I was a receptionist there, you know, so I had to write it in Arabic, you know. So you have 3 vowels, and we have 9 vowels, you know. But the problem is that I used to say like this when I teach my students. We have 9 vowels, but in fact we have 18 vowels or even more, because you have the long vowel, you have the short one, but you also have the up one and down one, long one and short one. So like O, for example.
Do you think Swedish is a melody language?
Yes, it is. My students always say, you know, you have a lot of melody. And I notice it when I have, for example, Turkish students, Persian students. They don't have any melody in their language, you know. No. So, you know, it sounds a little bit boring. They can be very ambitious and, of course, very nice, but they don't have that kind of melody, you know. So we have to work with it to go up and down. And also you have to put the accent on each word. So you have 9 word classes, you know, like the numbers. If you are interested in numbers, you have 9 numbers, and of the 0. And the 0, of course, comes from your country, you know. The thing is that, you know, now we are coming to the soft vowels and the hard vowels. So, you know, when you have, you know, like G, it can be pronounced like G or like J. And then you have the K, which can be pronounced, of course, as a K, but also as the sound. So when you have the soft vowels, like, for example, Kista, many people from Asia, from India, for example, and also maybe from Pakistan and Bangladesh, because you are coming from that part, you know. So they work in Kista at LM Ericsson. They have 40,000 workers there, you know. So all the time when I come to Kista and I see someone looking like you, LM Ericsson. So the thing is that, you know, you have the soft vowels. That means that, for example, Kista, it's like the hush sound. If I ask you to be quiet, of course I will not ask you to do that, because we are talking to each other, you know, but it's the hush sound. Shh, be quiet. And most languages have that, you know. So Kista is the place, but, for example, a coffin when you are dying, you know. Most people need a coffin, you know. So that is Kista. So Kista is the place. So if we say the coffin in the place Kista, kistan i Kista, and it's spelled in the same way.
Spelled in the same way?
Yeah, in the same way.
This pronunciation is different.
Yes, it is.
And coming to this Skärholmen and Skärholmen.
Yeah, let's see, I must think myself. Skärholmen. So what happens to your lips? Because I was studying phonetic, you have to study. If you are a Swedish as a foreign language teacher, I was studying, for the SFI and also for the second language, and I also had Swedish for Swedish people, So the thing is that, then you have to learn this kind of sounds, how to pronounce it. And then what you do with your lips, you have to close them a little bit. So you can be open, Skärholmen, like 7, we can take 7. Yeah. So most people, they say sju.
Nowadays you are working one of your book, which I think most of your life experience. Can you please introduce to the viewers about your ongoing book? Yeah. So I decided, when I was around 33, 44, I was married, I have got my child, and then I had a dream in the night. It was about a king in Sweden, and I was just thinking, why am I dreaming about this king? And then I decided to study a little bit about this king. His name was Carl Johan Bernadotte. He was the ancestor of the king that we have now. It's the 7 or 8 generation with this family. And we had about 4 different families in Sweden. And we are the oldest royal family in the world. Oldest royal family in the world?
Yeah, we are. And then of course we have the emperor in Japan, but they have a cesarean. So we have a king and they have cesarean. So there is some difference, So I decided to read about this king, and then I started to study history. And one thing led to another. I met people from this, 100 countries now, because now is one more. Which you point out to me, I have a student from Indonesia. So I learned many things, I was visiting 36 countries now. I lived in India, I lived in different countries in Africa. I lived with people in France, I mean, Hindu people, Sikh people, Muslim people from Afghanistan. I have many friends from Pakistan. I had friends in Africa, African, from the north part and the south part. So I noticed that there is not a big difference between people, We are the same, all of us, We need food, we need water, we need some place to stay. And this is the main problems in the world right now. People don't have enough food, or maybe nutritious food. They don't have clean water, and they don't have anywhere to live. They live in sheds. I mean, we all know that. And so on. So I noticed that we are the same. On the surface, you are a little bit more sunburned than me, and maybe I want to be sunburned like you. So I buy some cream, some expensive cream.
And when people take the whitening creams.
Yeah, they do, It's so boring, I mean, nowadays I don't put any cream. I am not in the sun because it's dangerous, But under the skin, under the different hair color, under the different eye color, we're all the same. We want love, we want understanding, we want respect, we want to learn things. I notice with most of my students, because I don't only teach Swedish as a foreign language. I was working in the preschool, primary school, high school. I also work in prisons, And that was also very interesting because I worked in different prisons, and I noticed that many of them are very high educated,
So but they were there due to some crime?
Yeah, they were doing some crime, different crimes.
What may be the reason? They don't understand the Swedish values or rules?
60% of the people, I don't know how it is nowadays, this was in 2004, 2005, they were sitting because of beating up or abuse girlfriend or wife. And then of course we are talking about men. There are also women who are abusing their husbands, but usually the men don't call the police and say that my wife was beating me or something. But I met men who were abused by the women, But 60% of the people sitting in prisons, they're sitting for abusing their girlfriend or wife, you know. And since 1950, it's forbidden to touch someone, you know, even on the hand, you know. You are not allowed to beat someone, yes. Or also, you know, mental abuse, but of course you don't get prison for that. So 60% are sitting in prison for that. 60% are foreigners. So that means 40% Swedish people. And I also noticed when I was there, I had very good contact with my students that were interns. Very good contact, you know. So I didn't have any problem because I show respect. You have to see the person, and then you have to see what he did. In this case, it was men, you know. They are also coming from dictator countries with conflicts and wars. So, you know, when you have problem in your country, of course you take these things with you, and if you don't go to a psychologist or you don't deal with your problems, of course you will get more problems because it's a new country, a new culture, maybe not the same religion, and you know, so there are many things, you know.
These are very good advices. At the end, will you give some more advice to people coming to Sweden or still living here? So what will you advise to them?
I will try to advise to them, the very simple thing to do is to write down your experiences, you know. You can write it for yourself. You don't need to publish it. Like you are a publisher, you know, you are writing books, I'm also writing books. You don't need to publish it. You can write it for yourself. If you have no one to talk to, maybe you come by yourself. You are the only person coming, you know. It's a big step, you know. So you can make a diary. Another thing is that, you know, maybe to write drawings. If you have been in a war, if someone has died, whatever, you can make a drawing of it, you know. So you can also make drawings or paint. You can also start dancing to express yourself. You can also start sport to express yourself. You can also read books, because maybe you are not balanced when you are coming here. So, you know, when you read a book, then you have to focus on the book, and you have to forget your reality, you know. So to read is also very good, you know.
Very good.
I think, you know, before you are leaving your country, and in most cases you are never going back, you know. I met so many refugees and foreigners, you know, say, oh, we are just going to stay here for some time and then we are going back. But once you have decided to make a family, get married with someone from Sweden, or maybe get married with someone from your country, and you have created the children, produced the children, then the children will decide in the future about your life, you know, because they don't want to leave this country, you know. They want to live here, you know. So when you take that big step, you know, this, you know, something, you know, because, you know, in Sweden, before 18, then you can decide over your children, but you can't do, I mean, everything that you want to do, you know.
Yeah, I do agree, because I said in migration there is no back gear, and my oncoming book's title is Vatnesani, My Second Homeland, and I'm very thankful to you for your very good essay about Swedish culture. So that has been translated in that book. That book will be in Urdu. So I say that while we are living in Sweden, so now it's our motherland.
Yes.
So we'll not go back.
Yeah.
So we should know the rules and have good integration in the society.
Yeah, and there is also another thing that some foreigners are forgetting, you know. Because, you know, when they come, they get friends. Maybe they meet people from the same country, and all these people are telling, you have a right to get this, you have a right to get that, you know. But most of the time they forget also the obligations, that when you are coming here, you also have to do something. You have a right to get a job, but you also have to work. You have a right to go to school, but you also should go to school and learn the language. And this is what the new government, I don't want to talk about politics, but I think it's good, you know, that Sweden has put down their feet a little bit more now, because, you know, when you come to a new country, of course you have to work.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you can't get to work, you have to study.
Yeah, exactly.
And most Swedish people, and also many immigrant people, they are working full-time and studying full-time. I did it myself. I had a small child, he was only 6. I was working full-time as a teacher, and after school, twice a week, I was biking to the university, and then after the university I was biking home to take my son from the day mother, you know. And then of course you have to study in the weekend, you know, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know, when you can. So we are used to study full time and work full time, and many immigrants do that. But one thing is there, as an immigrant, of course, most probably I will think that you are not born in Sweden, although you have a very good Swedish and you also have a very good English, and you look like a Swedish person, very decent and nice. But you know, the thing is that as a foreigner, to get a job, what I noticed in the school when we get a foreign teacher, for example, then I always ask for the CV after some time, and then I'm never surprised that to get a job in a Swedish school, for example, you have to be better than all the Swedish people, you know, in the school. You have to have more, you know, points and all that, you know, so you really have to struggle hard, you know.
Thank you very much for your time, and I hope the viewers will like today's conversation, today's interview with Anne-Charllotte Anderson, and please write your comments. We'll wait for your feedback, and keep in touch, and next time we'll meet again. Maybe we'll take a next interview in Swedish.
Yes, we can do that.
På svenska.
Yes,
Nästa
yes,
gång.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So thank you very much for today, and we'll see again.
Yes, and thanks for the viewer who are looking at your channel. And what do you call it?
Arif Kisana's YouTube channel.
Okay, yes, it's your first name and second name, yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, and have a good day.